Hideyoshi Okoye was living his normal virgin life when one day a busty maid unexpectedly appeared at his door claiming to be an assassin looking for a job. As she approached the Okoye residence, Hideyoshi was still asleep in his messy room, oblivious to the world. However, the doorbell woke him up and sluggishly he made his way downstairs, checking the entry camera to see who it was. Outside stood a beautiful woman, apologizing for the intrusion and expressing her desire to be hired as the household's maid. Still half asleep, Hideyoshi invited her in, apologizing for the untidy state of his home and explaining that his parents were away. As he made his way to the kitchen to grab a drink, it suddenly dawned on him that he had just let a complete stranger into his house without thinking. Growing suspicious, he tried to maintain a polite demeanor while keeping a close eye on her, wondering if she was trying to sell something or involved in something shady. To buy time, he asked if she had experience working as a maid. The woman responded that she had, but her previous jobs were a bit different. She explained that she used to execute traitors who had betrayed her former employer, and she was recommended for this maid position by that very same employer. Hideyoshi was taken aback, unsure whether she was joking, but something told him she wasn't. Fear began to creep over him, and he realized that getting her out of the house was now a priority. He asked if she had any connection to his family, and she explained that he was the grandson of the second son of the cousin of the wife of the heir to her former employer. Hideyoshi blurted out that he was practically a stranger to this employer, but quickly tried to correct himself to avoid offending her. In an attempt to steer the conversation elsewhere, he asked what kind of executions she specialized in. Without hesitation, she took him outside and demonstrated her skills by throwing sharp projectiles at a nearby tree. Hideyoshi quickly made it clear that he had no intention of hiring her and anyone, and besides, he didn't even know the employer she spoke of. He firmly declined her services. The maid seemed to understand, apologized for the intrusion, and left without further trouble. Hideyoshi, still in shock, wondered if it had all been a strange dream. But then he noticed something in the grass. A small bell had fallen off her tiara. Meanwhile, the maid, having expected this outcome, pondered where she should go next as she waited for the subway. Just as she prepared to leave, Hideyoshi came running toward her, holding the bell. Distracted by his urgency, he didn't notice Truck-kun speeding toward him. In a flash, the maid yanked him out of the way, saving his life. The truck driver cursed at Hideyoshi for his carelessness and drove off. The maid, still shaken by the adrenaline, admitted she had never saved anyone before and that her heart was racing. Hideyoshi handed her the bell, thanking her, and they said their goodbyes. However, just as they were about to part ways, Hideyoshi changed his mind. He blurted out that he actually was looking for a maid and she could work at his house after all. They returned to the Okoye residence, where the maid spread an array of blades on the table, explaining that knives were likely humanity's first tools and, though simple, could be deadly in the right hands. Hideyoshi interrupted, stating that what he needed was help cleaning, not with weapons. The maid, thinking this was some sort of code, asked who needed to be cleaned up. Hideyoshi pointed at the bags of trash in his room, hoping it would be self-explanatory. She, however, misinterpreted, thinking someone was stuffed inside one of the bags. Exasperated, Hideyoshi clarified that he needed help with actual cleaning, like sweeping and mopping the floors. The maid asked if she'd be hired if she did the job, and once that was settled, it became apparent that she had no idea how to use a mop or bucket. What followed was a series of calamities. She spilled water everywhere, slipped, and ended up with a bucket stuck on her head. Hideyoshi, seeing the disaster unfold, removed the bucket from her head and apologized, saying it was his fault for asking her to do something she wasn't used to. He then offered to help her clean together. By late afternoon, the house was spotless, and the two shared a moment of relief. Hideyoshi thanked the maid, who looked awkward, clearly not used to receiving praise. He realized it was getting late and neither of them had eaten, having been so focused on cleaning. He asked if she could cook, but her silence answered that question. Reassuring her, he told her he had the perfect meal in mind and suggested she take a bath while he prepared it. In the bathroom, the maid reflected on how strange it felt to be thanked for her work. Meanwhile, Hideyoshi, back in the living room, pondered the oddity of his summer vacation. With his parents away, he had somehow ended up with an assassin maid who couldn't clean or cook, but he was also concerned about another possibility. What if she walked out of the bathroom wearing just a towel? However, when she emerged from the bathroom, she was fully dressed, shattering his expectations. She promptly began chopping cabbage for dinner, one thing she was skilled at. She had always eaten simply to survive, never for taste or presentation. Hideyoshi, moved by her admission, assured her that the tonkatsu was special. It came from the Katsuda couple, who had been making the best food in the region for over 60 years, all at a very reasonable price. There were even rumors that famous people would disguise themselves just to get a taste of the legendary tonkatsu. Despite Hideyoshi's convincing pitch, the maid remained unimpressed, showing little to no excitement, which left him feeling slightly frustrated. But, accepting that this was just her way, he decided to let the food speak for itself. Seizing the moment, Hitoyoshi asked for her name. She responded that she didn't have one, explaining that her employers had always called her whatever they wished, so he was free to do the same. Not particularly skilled at coming up with names, Hitoyoshi decided to stick with calling her Maid. Though she had never cared about what people called her before, for some reason, this time felt different. When they finally began eating, Hitoyoshi eagerly waited for her reaction. After taking a bite, the maid mused that, as usual, she couldn't tell if the food was good or bad, as taste wasn't something she paid attention to. However, she did note that the food was warm and pleasant, a feeling that echoed her experience with the bath earlier. Inwardly, she reflected that the warmth of the food and bath was much like the warmth she felt from the person sitting across from her. Hitoyoshi then pointed out where she'd be staying and assured her that everything was set up. The maid was surprised to hear that he had prepared a room just for her, and it triggered a memory from her past. She recalled a man who had once told her she had passed a test, praising her for her cold, white skin and icy heart. On that day, he had also given her a name, but she now preferred to have none, which was better than being called the cold woman. Her thoughts were interrupted when Hitoyoshi passed her the tonkatsu sauce, explaining that the dish wasn't the same without it. Without hesitation, she poured the sauce over her meal and took another bite. This time, the taste overwhelmed her and she couldn't help but express her delight, a rare break in her normally stoic demeanor. Later that night, around 3 a.m., Hitoyoshi woke up drenched in sweat after a nightmare he hadn't had in years. Feeling a sudden hunger, he decided to go downstairs to grab some instant ramen. But as he descended the stairs, he heard an odd noise coming from the kitchen. Startled, he remembered that the maid had mentioned being a professional assassin. Despite his fear, he mustered the courage to check. Peeking into the kitchen, he saw the maid with a red stain on her face. For a moment, he thought it was blood, but as she turned, he realized it was just tonkatsu sauce. Caught red-handed, the maid apologized profusely. Relieved that it wasn't anything serious, Hitoyoshi didn't scold her. Not wanting her to limit her experience to just the tonkatsu, Hitoyoshi whipped up an impromptu fondue with the sauce since there wasn't much else to make it fancy. But all the maid really wanted was more of the sauce, and that's exactly what she indulged in. After the meal, she asked if Hitoyoshi had a nightmare, having overheard him moaning in his room. Worried he might be dangerous like her, she admitted to entering his room and found him calling out for his mother repeatedly. The maid also shared that she had a dream of her own, where she spoke to the tonkatsu sauce, which claimed it was endless and no matter how much she tried, it would never run out. At least it was a change from her usual bad dreams. She felt sympathy for Hitoyoshi, knowing all too well what it was like to suffer from disturbing dreams. Hitoyoshi brushed it off, saying it was just a recurring dream he had from time to time. He explained that as a child, he could only sleep when resting on his mother's lap, especially after such nightmares. Moved by his words, the maid offered him her lap to rest on, sensing it might bring him comfort. As Hitoyoshi lay his head on her lap, her thoughts drifted back to the man who had always told her she was born to kill, a shadow that often hung over her. But in that moment, as the boy rested on her lap, the weight of that darkness seemed to lift, if only slightly. The situation felt awkward for both of them, but neither backed out. They stayed that way, seeing it through until the end. She then questioned why her heart had raced when she saved Hitoyoshi, unlike the times when she had sent others to their deaths. She couldn't understand why her body had moved instinctively to protect him. The next morning, she slashed through the trash before bagging it. When Hitoyoshi asked why, she explained it was to save space, which impressed him. Suddenly, they discovered a small dog abandoned in front of the house, accompanied by a note from a broke man, mistaking Hitoyoshi for someone wealthy, thinking he would take care of it. Though reluctant, Hitoyoshi didn't want the dog to end up an orphan like you. However, the maid, following her master's teachings, thought differently. She pointed out that saving the dog out of sympathy would weaken its natural survival instincts. She asked if Hitoyoshi was ready to take responsibility for the dog, but he brushed off her concerns, stating that just as she had saved him, he was saving the dog, not out of sympathy but instinct. His words stirred something in her, and when he mentioned how he, too, knew the feeling of abandonment, she was moved. He took the dog in, quickly becoming attached to it, while the maid kept her distance, treating the dog like a plague. Hitoyoshi tried to encourage her to pet the dog, but she slid away and he realized that she was actually afraid of dogs. Embarrassed, the maid began shaking, which Hitoyoshi found endearing. She explained that during her assassin training, she had been left alone in the mountains with wild, vicious dogs. Understanding her trauma, Hitoyoshi acknowledged it was unfortunate that she couldn't help with the dog, but his words made the maid feel disappointed in herself. Determined, the maid asked to hold the dog, but when she finally did, her fear made her tremble. Hitoroyoshi asked what specifically scared her, and she pointed to its claws, teeth, and eyes, which she found terrifying. Hitoroyoshi, on the other hand, joked that the dog looked more like a mochi to him, a concept the maid didn't quite understand. Suddenly, the puppy nibbled her finger, causing her to panic and almost throw the dog. After calming down, they noticed the dog nibbling on Hitoriyoshi's hand as well. Upon checking its teeth, they realized it was teething and decided to take it to the vet. While at the animal hospital, the maid impressed Hitoroyoshi by going out to buy dog supplies. On a walk later that day, the maid opened up to Hitoroyoshi, admitting she had never met someone as kind as him. Her previous masters had been cold and unforgiving, only caring about her completing tasks and tolerating no failures. Hitoroyoshi, by contrast, was gentle with her despite her many mistakes. She expressed her desire to stay by his side, in a world so different from her past, filled with warmth instead of the cold world of survival through assassination. After hearing her out, Hitoroyoshi gently pointed out that what she truly wanted was to leave her life as an assassin behind and become an ordinary girl, something she had never considered before. Until now, all she had known was ending people, but with her new master, she found hope. Hitoroyoshi confessed that at first he had been afraid of her, but now he saw her as a good kid. Hearing that made the maid think of her past, and she asked Hitoroyoshi to help her learn how to be a normal girl. Though he doesn't know much about girly things, Hitoroyoshi encourages her to learn how to accept mistakes and not be too hard on herself. The next morning, the maid is practicing how to cut cabbage, determined to make okonomiyaki, wanting to pair it with her favorite sauce. Suddenly, the dog appears out of nowhere by her legs, startling her. She's surprised that a normal dog could sneak up on her, an assassin. But when the dog's stomach growls, she realizes it's hungry and feeds it some food. While the dog is eating, she tentatively reaches out to pet it, but stops when Hitoroyoshi enters. He starts gently stroking the fluffy dog, and after feeling its round belly, he decides to name it Mochi. He praises the maid for feeding the dog and for chopping the cabbage, giving her a twirl in celebration. This makes her cling to him, slightly embarrassed yet pleased. Mochi, full of energy, starts playfully humping and pegging for attention, but Hitoroyoshi explains that he can't play right now since he needs to prepare dinner. The maid steps up, offering to play with Mochi, saying she wants to prove she can be a normal girl who believes in what Hitoroyoshi says. Hearing this, Hitoroyoshi tells her that he believes in her too, boosting her confidence. With newfound determination, she starts petting the dog, and with every touch, she feels herself warming up to it. Eventually, she's giving Mochi belly rubs and touching its paws. She realizes that just as Hitoroyoshi had grown to trust her, she was beginning to trust the dog. At dinner, after tasting the saucy okonomiyaki, she lets out an involuntary happy sound. When Hitoroyoshi offers her another serving, she tries to decline, but her excited body language betrays her true feelings. Sensing her hesitation, Hitoroyoshi reassures her that it's okay to ask for something if she wants it. Taking this opportunity, she nervously asks him for a name of her own. Hitoroyoshi ponders for a moment, asking her about her birth date. While she doesn't know the exact day, she recalls it being during the winter. With that in mind, Hitoroyoshi comes up with the name Yuki, meaning snow. The name reminds her of her old master, who called her cold-blooded, but Hitoroyoshi sees snow differently. To him, snow is beautiful, like a blanket that protects seeds from the cold, allowing them to bloom into vibrant flowers. Hearing his comforting words and seeing his gentle expression, Yuki starts to understand that life with Hitoroyoshi is warmer and more beautiful than anything she's ever known. She realizes that as long as she stays by his side, she might one day learn what it's like to live a normal life. With deep gratitude, Yuki thanks Hitoroyoshi for giving her a name, her smile breaking through shyly. Seeing her genuine smile for the first time, Hitoroyoshi feels a wave of happiness, glad that she's finally able to express herself freely. One day, as Yuki plays with Mochi, Hitoroyoshi drops by with a favorite ask. When she asks what it is, he confesses he wants to get his ear pierced, and he's hoping Yuki, who already has piercings, can help him poke a hole in his ear. She agrees, but as soon as she brings the blade close, she hesitates, pulling back at the thought of hurting her own master. Just then, the doorbell rings. When Yuki answers it, she finds a girl standing there, asking for her brother. Yuki realizes this is Hitoriyoshi's younger sister, Riko, who bursts in excitedly. Once inside, Riko teases her brother, surprised that her loser virgin brother could hire a maid as attractive as Yuki. She demands to know why he never mentioned this at family gatherings. But Hitoroyoshi awkwardly explains that he was worried their mother would freak out, and although their dad approved of him getting a maid, he had no idea she was so striking. Riko isn't buying it and berates him for hiding the truth. Curious, Yuki asks why the siblings live separately, but Riko ignores the question and instead gushes over Yuki's beauty, which Hitoroyoshi explains is because Riko adores beautiful people and has no tolerance for ugly men like her brother. Riko quickly turns her attention to Yuki's backstory and learns that Hitoyoshi was the one who gave Yuki her name. Shocked, Riko watches as Yuki starts telling her origin story, explaining how she was once a nameless assassin until Hitoyoshi named her. Riko has a brief moment of disbelief, but then enthusiastically asks Yuki to autograph her notebook. Yuki obliges, but her signature ends up looking more like squiggly worms than letters. She defends herself, explaining that while she can speak 12 languages thanks to her assassin days, she's never actually studied calligraphy. Riko is unfazed and gets the idea to make Yuki her summer research project. Hitoyoshi objects, but Riko insists that Yuki is perfect for her project, wanting to show her assassin side. Despite his protests, she reassures him that she'll make it seem like Yuki is just a regular maid with a mysterious aura. They head to the backyard where Yuki demonstrates her skills by throwing a blade straight at an apple placed on Riko's head, narrowly avoiding giving Hitoyoshi a heart attack. Riko, fascinated, asks how many knives Yuki carries and where she hides them. Yuki reveals she has 5, but as she's about to show the one strapped to her thigh, Hitoyoshi quickly intervenes, stopping her from letting Yuguners from seeing her treasure. Later, as Riko bombards Yuki with more random questions, her stomach growls. When she asks if Yuki has a special dish, Yuki responds by chopping up a pile of cabbages with impressive skill and serves them plain on a plate, much to Riko's delight. They decide to head to McDonald's afterward, and there they notice a poster for a fireworks festival. Hitoyoshi mentions that the festival is famous for its tonkatsu sauce, which immediately gets Yuki's attention, so they decide to check it out. At the festival, Riko eagerly drags Yuki to a shooting game booth. Despite her enthusiasm, Riko struggles and misses every shot. Yuki takes her turn with confidence but misses as well, admitting that shooting has never been her strong suit. They move on to a goldfish catching game, where Yuki channels her inner focus, managing to scoop up plenty of fish. Impressed, Riko asks Yuki to teach her, and Yuki patiently shares her technique. The game attendant, observing Yuki's helpfulness, compliments her as a good sister. Afterward, they buy the good stuff, which Yuki has been excited to try. The taste is so delicious it nearly overwhelms her, and she devours it like how I devoured your mom last night. The clerk, amused by her reaction, gives her extra for free, which leaves her temporarily speechless. Riko then heads off to buy some drinks. Hitoyoshi tries to follow, but Riko assures him she'll be fine on her own. While waiting, Hitoyoshi asks Yuki if she has any festival memories. But Yuki recounts a mission from her assassin days where instead of enjoying herself, she had to eliminate a target during a festival, stabbing him in the back as they watched fireworks together. Hitoyoshi is left speechless. But before he can respond, the fireworks begin. Yuki gazes at them in awe, captivated by their beauty. Riko then returns with drinks, declaring that summer festivals are the best, and Yuki smiles in agreement. On their way home, Riko jokingly scolds Yuki for eating so much sauce, warning her that she might get as big as your mom. Suddenly, they hear someone shout about a robbery, and a motorbike whizzes by, nearly hitting Yuki. Acting swiftly, Yuki pulls Riko out of harm's way, and Riko, flustered, reacts to being saved like a princess. Hitoyoshi, however, is annoyed at the spilled sauce, muttering that the robber deserves to meet his fate. Yuki takes his words literally and charges off after the thief. Seeing her in action, Riko follows along, eager to witness Yuki take action. As Yuki leaps across rooftops, Riko and Hitoyoshi chase her, eventually taking a shortcut to catch up. Where they finally spot the thief, Yuki gracefully throws a knife at his tires, stopping him in his tracks. As she approaches him with a fierce look, Hitoyoshi quickly shouts for her to stop. She obliges, flicking the robber's helmet as a minor punishment before announcing that she's hungry again. Laughing, they decide to buy more sauce and leave the robber, who is now so shaken he willingly turns himself in. After grabbing some extra food, they head home, and Riko excitedly talks about showcasing her summer project featuring Yuki to her class. This confuses Yuki, who then asks what school is. Riko explains it as an amazing place for learning, but is interrupted by a text from her mom saying she's made beef stew. Riko rushes off, and Yuki, noticing her eagerness, finds it endearing. The next day, Yuki tells Hitoyoshi she wants to experience school for herself. That morning at school, Hitoyoshi arrives, wondering if Yuki will be alright. His friends approach, chattering about a rumor of a busty big gyat maid in town, causing Hitoyoshi to spit out his drink in shock. He tries to brush it off, but then the teacher introduces a new student, Yuki, stepping into the classroom with confidence, much to his surprise. Yuki then introduces herself as Hitoyoshi's cousin in front of the class. But when she sits down, she unexpectedly calls him master, shocking everyone around. Later, after school, Riko appears and casually asks Hitoyoshi how his day went. Stone-faced, he quickly deduces that Riko is behind this setup, and she enthusiastically celebrates her plan's success. On the way home, Riko talks up Yuki's skills, mentioning that before Yuki even enrolled, she mastered everything she needed to know about school in just 3 days. Hitoriyoshi, still baffled, asks how Yuki suddenly became his cousin, conveniently in his class in school without him knowing. Riko explains that Yuki has a connection from her previous job as an assassin, which helped her get registered in the same class as him. Riko then suggested that Yuki pose as his cousin to make it easier to explain their interactions going forward. However, it was Riko's idea to keep this a secret, just to see Hitoriyoshi's reaction. Hitoriyoshi playfully smacks Riko on the head, but Yuki, concerned, asks if she's done something wrong. He quickly softens, reassuring her that he doesn't mind and hopes they can both enjoy their school life together. The next day, students rush out of class eager to grab some popular Katsuta bread from the cafeteria, which catches Yuki's interest. When Hitoriyoshi asks what she'd like for lunch, she replies that she wants the Katsuta bread they've been talking about. However, he explains that it's rarer than your father coming home, and that she'll need to be quick to get one during lunch. He even draws her a map showing how their classroom is the farthest from the cafeteria. While he feels uncertain about her chances, Yuki is determined, declaring that if the others can get the bread, she can too. Full of conviction, she dashes out, even leaping out of a window to the roof. Initially, Hitoriyoshi tries to stop her, but she fearlessly sprints across the railing, showing the fierce look of someone in pursuit of food. Realizing there's no stopping her, Hitoriyoshi watches anxiously, fearing she might expose her abilities in front of the crowd. Just as Yuki is about to jump down, she changes course and swings herself down perfectly in front of the cafeteria, snapping one bread and a sandwich. Fearfully, she then tells Hitoriyoshi that due to the high demand, she could only buy one of each. But he reveals that he's had the Katsuta bread before, insisting she enjoy her hard-earned bread. Yuki, touched, hesitates but finally takes a bite, squealing with joy at the taste. Moved by her happiness, she even shares her sandwich with him, shoving the big glizzy down his throat. That evening, Riko announces she's staying over despite Hitoriyoshi's resistance. She teases him, mentioning that he gets to live with Yuki and could clap her anytime. Riko then shares that she always wanted a sister to talk about boys with and has even imagined her brother clapping Yuki in her daydreams. Suddenly, she has a grand idea. If Hitoriyoshi were to marry Yuki, her wish would come true. Riko is convinced Yuki likes him, but Hitoriyoshi insists Yuki doesn't feel romantic emotions. He even recalls a time recently when she didn't react at all when shoving a glizzy down his throat. Still, Riko is undeterred, speculating that their father would be supportive but their mother less so. Just then, Yuki joins in and asks, confused, who's getting married. Riko reveals everything and directly asks Yuki if she likes Hitoriyoshi. Yuki replies that she admires him, which leaves Hitoriyoshi momentarily flustered. Later, as they hang out, Riko asks Yuki if she wears makeup, admiring her natural beauty. Yuki responds that she doesn't wear any makeup, prompting Riko to compliment her, saying that her face is the envy of many girls. Yuki, however, admits that her looks didn't serve any purpose in her former line of work. Riko, feeling self-conscious, remarks that she herself doesn't have a particularly pretty face, but Yuki reassures her by saying she genuinely likes how Riko looks. This surprises and warms Riko, who has never heard such praise from anyone besides her parents. She asks if she could ever look as beautiful as Yuki, and Yuki tells her that since she started eating tonkatsu sauce, her skin has been glowing. She then offers Riko some of her tonkatsu glazed melon, which initially confuses her, but she eventually enjoys it. Observing their interaction, Hitoriyoshi thinks that they already seem like sisters and credits Riko for helping Yuki adjust to normal life so quickly. Noticing his expression, Riko teases him, suggesting he must be imagining marrying Yuki so he can watch scenes like this every day. Hitoriyoshi tries to deny it, but when Riko asks if he would be happy with someone as charming as Yuki, he eventually agrees, making her smile. Meanwhile, a mysterious cat watches them from the bushes. The next day in class, the teacher is giving a lesson on how to cook the good stuff from Breaking Bad. However, he spots Hitoriyoshi dozing off and tosses a piece of chalk his way. Without anyone noticing, Yuki slices the chalk mid-air, but in the process, accidentally blinds Hitoriyoshi. Concerned, he heads to the infirmary, where he meets a beautiful, busty, big gaff health teacher, Nida, a striking woman whose appearance seems right out an anime. After he explains his eye issue, she directs him to sit on the bed, and he's immediately on edge due to the strange vibe he senses. Nida then begins questioning him about Yuki, and when he mentions that Yuki is his cousin, she laughs, saying he doesn't look related to someone as gorgeous as Yuki. While examining him, she suddenly compliments his looks, calling him handsome, and locks the door, and her demeanor shifts. She leans in closer, playfully pushing him onto the bed and teasing him. But just as she's about to cross the line, Yuki bursts in, locking eyes with Nida in a fierce stare. Hitoriyoshi, startled, scrambles over to Yuki for protection, but Nida brushes it off as a joke, saying he just looked cute like a hamster under pressure. Ignoring Nida's attempts to lure him back, Yuki firmly pulls Hitoyoshi out of the room and instructs him to stay away from Nida. Remembering Riko's words, Hitoyoshi wonders if Yuki might actually have feelings for him and be feeling a bit jealous. Frustrated, Nida dismisses them, saying his condition isn't serious. As Yuki escorts Hitoyoshi away, she quietly apologizes for her behavior and says she has something important to tell him, causing his heart to race. But instead of a confession, Yuki reveals that Nida is also an assassin, leaving him stunned. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, the lurking cat approaches Nida. The cat, it turns out, is delivering photographs of Hitoyoshi's home, which Nida begins plotting to destroy. Nida has always dreamed of one day settling down on a beach surrounded by tough, fit men, but before she can fulfill that wish, she must eliminate both Hitoyoshi and Yuki. Meanwhile, Hitoyoshi struggles to sleep as Yuki refuses to leave his side, worried that Nida, an unknown threat to them, might bang him at any moment. Hitoyoshi tells her he can't relax with her hovering so close if Yuki comes up with an idea. She then lies down beside him, suggesting that her thighs could help him relax, a dream scenario for most men. Embarrassed, he admits he's more concerned about her safety, which makes her blush, but Yuki assures him she can defend herself even in her sleep. Yuki suspects that Nida might hold a grudge from her past. To comfort Hitoyoshi, she holds his hand, promising to protect the person who taught her what warmth feels like. Hitoyoshi, feeling a bit warm himself from their hand-holding, gets up to open the window, but Yuki stops him, cautioning that he could easily get ambushed through it. Just then, she notices the smell of savory tonkatsu sauce, only to realize too late that it's a trap. Nida has already infiltrated their space and taken Hitoyoshi hostage, ready to do biological lessons with him. She then addresses Yuki by her true name, the White Wolf of the Dragon's 9 offsprings, and criticizes her for falling for such a simple trick. Yuki draws her knife, but Nida warns her that if she acts recklessly, she'll start by harming Hitoyoshi's eye. Yuki responds in Mandarin, threatening to feed Nida and her family to the dogs if she harms him, and this surprisingly unsettles Nida. Deciding to resolve things once and for all, Nida tells Yuki she'll be waiting at school for their duel, while she takes Hitoyoshi as her captive. After they leave, Yuki recalls her old master's words, that she is nothing more than a cold assassin with no hope for a happy ending. Yet determined to accept who she is, she steels herself to save Hitoyoshi at any cost, even if it means abandoning her peaceful life and returning to the shadows. Deep down, though, she longs for the warmth that Hitoyoshi has brought into her life. Meanwhile, Nida has tied up Hitoyoshi and, noticing his calmness, asks if he feels any resentment toward Yuki for getting him involved. Hitoyoshi admits that, though he's scared, he trusts Yuki, who promised to protect him. Curious about his lack of knowledge, he asks Nida about Ksu, a name she's mentioned before. Nida is surprised that Hitoyoshi doesn't know Yuki's background despite their close relationship. She reveals that Ksu, also known as the White Wolf, is a formidable assassin, one of the elite members of the Dragon's 9 offsprings, a group responsible for influencing some of history's most significant events. Nida realizes that killing Ksu, also known as Yuki, would skyrocket her own reputation, which is precisely her goal. But Hitoyoshi doubts her claims, insisting that the Yuki he knows is a sweet girl with a big heart and melons who loves life's little joys and squeals with happiness. Nida scoffs, admitting she's just as shocked to see what the once mighty Ksu has become under Hitoyoshi's influence. But the mention of them discussing marriage even made Nida so angry she joked about nuking their house. However, there's something about Hitoyoshi's calmness that intrigues her. She realizes he has an unusual power to soften Yuki's dark, cold heart. Nida believes that love weakens people, so with Hitoyoshi in the mix, she feels confident she'll be able to send Yuki to the afterlife to meet your dad. Just then, Yuki arrives, ready for a fight. Nida fires at her, but Yuki slices through the bullets effortlessly. Smirking, Nida reveals she's planted a landmine beneath Yuki, which she detonates thinking she's won. But in an instant, Yuki appears again, nearly taking Nida's head off. Hitoyoshi's presence visibly calms Yuki, as she reassures him that she'll save him. Frustrated by Yuki's dismissive attitude, Nida taunts her, mentioning her past and threatening that she could ruin Yuki's chance at a peaceful life with Hitoyoshi. But Yuki tells Nida to keep quiet, as her only concern is that Hitoyoshi has school tomorrow and needs his rest. Enraged, Nida demands to know why Yuki can't talk about anything other than Hitoyoshi. Yuki begins chatting about her favorite things: friends, snacks, sauces, causing Nida's patience to snap. She reveals her hidden weapons, all aim at Hitoyoshi, threatening to shoot if he struggles. Yuki finally decides she's had enough and charges at Nida. As the guns fire, Yuki expertly throws a knife into the air and deflects each bullet with her smaller blades, protecting Hitoyoshi. Nida tries to activate her backup plan, but Yuki's thrown knife hits Nida's phone, destroying her setup. As Yuki closes in, Nida has a flash of memory of who Sue really is. Desperate, Nida points a gun at Hitoyoshi, but Yuki intercepts and kicks her down. Nida snarls, taunting Yuki that she'll always beat Sue, the deadly assassin, and that no assassin can live a normal life. Yuki agrees that her old self had nothing but violence and death, but she tells Nida she won't take lives anymore or let anyone die because of her. For the sake of her future, Yuki intends to fight for a normal life. Nida, astonished, realizes that Yuki has changed. She's no longer just a killer, but a girl determined to protect what matters most. Nida smiles and laughs, finally understanding that she never had a chance against Yuki's resolve. On their way home, Yuki apologizes to Hitoyoshi for dragging him into danger and offers to leave if that's what he wants. Instead, Hitoyoshi takes her hand and with a gentle smile, asks her to teach him self-defense so he can protect her too. Blushing, Yuki realizes that he wants her by his side and she happily agrees. Days later, Yuki shines on the volleyball court like a pro athlete, her skills leaving everyone in awe. The boys, unable to believe a loser like Hitoyoshi could be related to someone so talented. Hitoyoshi, however, is too distracted by his lingering thoughts about Nida, a school doctor who revealed Yuki's secret as one of the dragon's 9 offspring. This revelation has only deepened his curiosity about her. During the game, Yuki briefly smiles at him, making the boys erupt with jealousy, but the moment is interrupted when a stray ball hurtles toward Hitoyoshi. He's saved by none other than Nida, now going by her real name, Grace. To make things even more confusing, Grace is now posing as a PE teacher and claims to be Hitoyoshi's cousin. The story flashes back to weeks earlier, when Grace first revealed her true identity as an assassin specializing in intelligence, unlike Yuki, who is adept with knives. Grace explained her interest in staying near them. She's fascinated by the idea of the legendary assassin Sue being tethered to someone as seemingly ordinary as Hitoyoshi. To ensure her stay, Grace proposed a deal: unlimited Katsuda sauce bread for 3 months in exchange for her presence being tolerated. While Hitoyoshi tried to decode what he thought was assassin jargon, Yuki casually accepted, knowing there was no hidden meaning, only the promise of delicious bread. Despite Hitoyoshi's worries, Yuki reassured him that Grace had no reason to harm them and vowed to protect him no matter what. However, her drooling betrayed her true motivation: the bread. Back in the present, Grace abandons her role as an observer, choosing instead to openly tease Hitoyoshi, much to Yuki's annoyance. Her playful antics provoke Yuki into serving the volleyball with such force that it nearly destroys the wall. Instead of being reprimanded, Yuki becomes the center of admiration as her peers gush over her powerful serve. Later, at lunch, Yuki admits to Hitoyoshi that she feels embarrassed by her actions. When he presses her about it, she confesses that seeing him close to another assassin made her feel alienated. Recognizing her jealousy, Hitoyoshi reassures her that her emotions are perfectly natural, which lifts her spirits. Over the weekend, Yuki starts her day by proudly doing laundry in her maid outfit. After weeks of struggling and repeated failures, she finally nails the process, leaving her feeling like a triumphant parent admiring their child. Hitoyoshi, seeing her joy, feels a sense of pride too. When dinner time arrives, they find they only have cabbage. While Yuki dreams of pairing the cabbage with Katsuda sauce, Hitoyoshi surprises her by buying pork katsu from his favorite vendor. Yuki is ecstatic, overwhelmed by the sheer sight of so much Katsuda sauce. During their meal, Yuki asks Hitoyoshi if he's ever felt the same excitement she feels for Katsuda sauce. He reminisces about his childhood visits to the Hero Theater, where he was mesmerized by Walmart Cam and Ryder's performances. Yuki finds his story oddly relatable. Watching the elderly vendor expertly prepare the cutlet, Yuki marvels at his skill, even joking that he might secretly be a samurai. The vendor's wife casually mentions that they invented Katsuda sauce, and Yuki immediately elevates them to godlike status, thanking them profusely for their culinary contribution. Thanks to the couple's Katsuda sauce, Yuki, who had never truly enjoyed food before, now experiences it on a profound level. Smiling warmly, she thanks them wholeheartedly for bringing happiness into her life. The grandma, touched by her gratitude, explains that the reason Yuki enjoys the sauce so much is because it carries the warmth of happiness. Yuki reflects on this sentiment, realizing that what she truly feels is the warmth she associates with Hitoyoshi. She agrees with the grandma's words, lost in thought when suddenly the grandpa appears behind her and brushes dust off her shoulder. Startled by how effortlessly this old man snuck up on her, Yuki is nonetheless impressed. Instead of fear, she feels amazement, convinced this old prune must be a retired samurai turned pork cutlet vendor. The grandma interrupts Yuki's musings by offering her a taste of a new sauce recipe. Like a cat eager for fish, Yuki leaps at the chance to try it. With one spoonful, she's transported to heaven, overwhelmed by its perfection. Later that night, after they've finished their dinner, Hitoyoshi finds himself conflicted. He still yearns to know more about the dragon's 9 offspring, but feels he shouldn't pursue it after seeing how content Yuki is in her new life. He realizes that Yuki's past is hers to share, and while he wants to ask, he knows it could bring her pain he understands all too well. As he drifts off to sleep, he dreams of his mother, who had left him. Despite his longing to hug her one last time, she never returned his embrace. Waking up in tears, he finds himself hugging Yuki. Yuki, noticing his distress, gently explains that she caught him sleepwalking. Flustered, Hitoyoshi accidentally slips and bumps into her, quickly apologizing. Realizing Hitoyoshi had another dream about his mother, Yuki invites him to rest on her lap again, offering comfort. Just then, Hitoyoshi's phone falls, and when Yuki picks it up, she notices he's been researching her past. Taking a deep breath, Yuki confesses that she doesn't know much about the dragon's 9 offspring herself. As an assassin, she only ever followed her master's orders and didn't officially join the organization, even though she crossed paths with its members. She never cared about their names. Her focus was always on her missions and avoiding disappointment in her master's eyes. Yuki admits that her past still haunts her, and that adjusting to her current life feels like living in a warm, fleeting dream. But whenever she looks at Hitoyoshi, she remembers what she truly desires: to be a normal girl. Hitoyoshi, moved by her honesty, tells her he feels the same. After what happened with Grace, he's been yearning to understand her better and help her achieve her goal. Yuki smiles warmly at him, making Hitoyoshi blush. Encouraged by his sincerity, Yuki agrees to share more about herself. She reveals that the reason she likes letting him rest on her lap is because the first time it happened, she felt for the first time that she was genuinely helping someone. She assures him that anytime he has nightmares, her lap will always be there to comfort him. Touched by her words, Hitoyoshi confesses that his dream wasn't actually a nightmare. Instead, it was hopeful. He saw Yuki, feeling the warmth that had been missing in his life since his mother left. Like any other day, Yuki begins her morning by waking up, getting dressed, and diving into her usual chores. She feels a small sense of accomplishment as she completes the laundry, remembering how much she struggled with it initially. Afterward, she washes the dishes, plays with her dog, and continues with her day. In the afternoon, Yuki heads to the market to shop for groceries. As she walks, she can't help but notice the lingering stares from the men she passes. While browsing, a young child approaches her and compliments her beauty, but then blurts out a remark about her maid outfit being unusual for a normal girl. Yuki is caught off guard by this and grows self-conscious. Later, she runs into Hitoyoshi, who has just purchased some books, and nervously asks if the child's comment has any truth to it. To ease her worries, Hitoyoshi offers to take her shopping for some clothes. When they arrive at the store, they unexpectedly find Riko and Grace waiting for them. Hitoyoshi demands to know why these two have shown up, calling them useless nuisances. Riko explains she came along to help her brother pick clothes, while Grace smugly reveals she hacked his phone to track his location, eager to see Yuki in some new outfits. Riko teases Grace, calling her out as an assassin too, but instead of replying, Grace hugs her in a way that unsettles Hitoyoshi. Riko takes charge and suggests a store, but instead of finding modest clothing, they end up with Yuki, trying on increasingly attention-grabbing maid outfits. Riko snaps photos of Yuki for her personal collection, prompting Hitoyoshi to scold her for choosing such a store. Grace then recommends another place, and despite Hitoyoshi's reservations, things get even worse. The outfits Yuki tries on make her look like some girl from the Vanilla Unicorn, much to Hitoyoshi's dismay. The group moves on, trying a mix of outfits, some genuinely beautiful, others downright provocative. Each time, they turn to Hitoyoshi for his opinion. When he suggests a simple white one-piece dress, Grace accuses him of being a closet pervert with questionable habits. Eventually, they survive the ordeal and finish shopping. With Halloween approaching, Riko suggests looking for costumes. Yuki tries on options like a witch or a police officer outfit, each one making her look irresistibly stunning. Hitoyoshi, meanwhile, spots a horror movie poster and expresses his love for scary films. Grace and Riko eagerly suggest they all go watch it, but Yuki appears puzzled. When asked, she admits she's been to a cinema before, but only for assassination missions, never to actually watch a movie. Later, they go to the theater to watch the film. Despite Yuki's past as a world-class assassin who ended lives without hesitation, the sight of zombies terrifies her. After the movie, Hitoyoshi tries to comfort her, reminding her that her assassin skills would make short work of any zombie threat. Yuki, still uneasy from the zombie movie, vents her disgust to Hitoyoshi about the idea of rotting corpses walking around. She grumbles that their clapped mouths desperately need a tic-tac. Hitoyoshi, observing her, realizes that Yuki views everything through the lens of her past life as an assassin. Afterward, they buy some crepes and enjoy them together. The lively atmosphere catches the eye of a pink-haired girl named Naka, who watches from a distance with envy. She wishes she could join in on the fun, but her teacher reprimands her, warning her to be more cautious. As Grace heads home, Hideyoshi offers to escort Riko back, asking Yuki to go ahead without them. However, Yuki takes a detour, admiring herself in her newly bought clothes. Despite their beauty, her mind keeps drifting back to her maid outfit. After some thought, she decides to switch back into it and spends time playing with her dog, Mochi. While playing, Yuki realizes she hasn't done the laundry all day. Spotting Mochi's dirty towel, she decides to clean it, but Mochi refuses, grabbing the towel and running off. Suddenly, the power goes out and the eerie lighting outside reminds Yuki of the zombie movie. As Mochi dashes around with a towel, he crashes into a table, knocking over food, which splatters on him. The commotion startles Yuki, who cautiously investigates. When she sees Mochi covered in food and holding the towel in his mouth, he looks like a creature straight from hell. Instinctively, she grabs a knife and slices the towel in half. Mochi begins crying over his ruined towel, and Yuki promises to fix it. Hideyoshi arrives, amused but skeptical of her ability to repair it after seeing the state it's in. Despite this, he supports her, trusting her determination. Noticing she's back in her maid outfit, Hideyoshi asks if she dislikes the clothes they bought earlier. Yuki assures him that she loves them but explains that her maid outfit is a gift from her late master, who encouraged her dream of living a normal life. It's her only keepsake from him, and she asks if it's okay to keep wearing it, even if it makes her seem odd. Using his do rise, Hideyoshi reassures Yuki that there's nothing wrong with her. Whether she's scared of zombies, a retired assassin, or simply someone who loves her maid outfit, she's fine just the way she is. He reminds her that everyone has quirks, and the most important thing is to stay true to herself. Yuki feels warm and fuzzy from his words, and Mochi barks in agreement. Picking Mochi up, Hideyoshi examines the ruined towel and realizes it's the same one they found him with. He suspects Mochi cherishes it because it carries the scent of his parents. Hearing this, Yuki becomes even more determined to fix it. She shares that she also has a keepsake, a small bell that reminds her of her sister. This revelation shocks Hideyoshi, who had known Yuki had a sibling. Days later, while enjoying ramen together, Hideyoshi curiously asks Grace about the whereabouts of Yuki's sister. Grace admits she doesn't know, but points out Yuki's bell and her surname Sue. When Hideyoshi presses further, Grace cuts him off, warning him never to interrupt her while eating. Grace, being a foreigner, deeply appreciates ramen as a symbol of Japanese culture. However, when she notices Yuki drowning her ramen in katsuta sauce, she snaps, threatening to make Yuki choke on the sauce for disrespecting ramen. Yuki, unfazed, continues to enjoy her meal. Later, they visit a store to restock the sauce, only to learn that it's sold out and won't be available until next week. Yuki is visibly crushed. With her precious sauce limited, she vows to use it sparingly. Seeing her so down, Hideyoshi tries to lift her spirits and asks if she remembers anything about her sister. Yuki confesses that her memories are hazy. She can't even recall her sister or their estranged parents' faces. All she remembers is the bell their mother gave her and her sister. Yuki hopes that if they meet again, her sister will recognize the bell. However, after 10 years apart, Yuki fears her sister may hate her, believing she abandoned her. Still, Yuki says that if her sister is living a happy life, she wouldn't mind if they never reunited. Their conversation is interrupted by Hideyoshi's friends Teiga and Kobachi. Teiga teases him, showing off a new CD featuring an artist performing at the upcoming Katsuta festival. Meanwhile, Kobachi scolds Hideyoshi for spending all his time with his maid instead of his friends. Despite the banner, Teiga thanks Yuki for brightening Hideyoshi's life. They jokingly expose Hideyoshi's edgy past, where he pretended to be a cool and protagonist but was actually an awkward, stinky weeb. Embarrassed, Hideyoshi silences Teiga, causing him to drop the CD. Before it hits the ground, Yuki dives to save it, but her katsuta sauce spills all over the street. Yuki watches in silent agony as her precious sauce is wasted. That night, Yuki has a nightmare where the katsuta sauce comes to life, berating her and declaring it would rather be anywhere else than with her. She wakes up distraught and tells Hideyoshi her life is meaningless without the sauce. She describes her bizarre dream where the sauce cheated on her, but hesitates to share another dream she's been having. One night, she visits Hideyoshi's room, asking him to stay with her. Hideyoshi, preoccupied with studying, promises to accompany her once he's finished. Grateful, Yuki calms down, praising Hideyoshi for being such a kind person. Flustered, he asks why she said that. Yuki then asks if there's anyone he dislikes. Hideyoshi confides that he holds resentment toward his father due to past events. This confession stirs memories of Yuki's sister and the bell, making her uncomfortable. She abruptly returns to her room, leaving Hideyoshi concerned. In her recurring nightmares, the katsuta sauce mocks her for abandoning her sister and claims everyone secretly hates her, including Hideyoshi. It taunts her, saying she's only good for assassinations. The sauce then dredges up painful memories of her past as a prodigy, a child who spoke 15 languages and had a photographic memory. Despite all the admiration she received, all Yuki wanted was to make her parents proud. On her birthday, her family was celebrating when someone knocked on the door. Her parents answered, but as they looked back at her one last time, they walked into the darkness without a word, leaving Yuki and her sister behind. It turns out that Yuki's parents were murdered by assassins who wanted to kidnap her for her exceptional talents. From that point on, Yuki's emotions became numb as she was forced into the life of an assassin. Her captors systematically erased her feelings, replacing them with cold, calculated skills. Yuki's transformation into a heartless killer drove a wedge between her and her sister, who grew to resent her. Despite this, Yuki pushed forward, burying her pain. One night in her nightmare, Yuki's old master appeared, intent on reclaiming her and dragging her back into her dark past. Just as her master reached out, Hitoriyoshi woke her up. Concerned, he asked if she was okay. Without hesitation, Yuki hugged him tightly and pulled him into bed. Hitoriyoshi was overwhelmed by this situation but stayed with her as she requested. Feeling how tightly she clung to him, he realized how much the nightmare affected her. Yuki admitted that it wasn't just a bad dream, it was a memory of her traumatic past. To comfort her, Hitoriyoshi gently patted her back, likening the rhythm to a calming heartbeat. Gradually, Yuki fell asleep to the soothing sound. The next day, the group discovered Yuki had no idea what the Katsuta festival was. Taiga enthusiastically explained that the festival involved cultural, sports, and music competitions between classes, with the winning team receiving a special Katsuta sauce prize. Yuki, already enamored with Katsuta sauce, became determined to win. However, they told her she needed to maintain high grades to participate. When Yuki proudly showed them her test paper with a score far below passing, Hitoriyoshi explained that the average grade required was 60. Yuki panicked at the realization but resolved to do better in practical exams to qualify. During lunch, Grace handed Yuki a Katsuta sandwich as part of a deal they made. Yuki thanked her, but Grace brushed it off, telling the group to leave her alone. Later, Hitoriyoshi mentioned Yuki's interest in the Katsuta festival. Seeing an opportunity, Grace revealed a test paper without a name and claimed it was Yuki's, explaining that failing to put her name automatically disqualified her. Yuki remembered forgetting to write her name and begged for mercy. Grace offered to fix it, but only if Yuki stopped bringing Katsuta sauce to ramen shops, a habit Grace couldn't stand. Suddenly, a pink flash zipped past Grace, and when she looked again, Yuki's name was already on the paper. Yuki tried to explain, but Hitoriyoshi silenced her, suggesting they let it slide. Frustrated, Grace left. Meanwhile, behind them, a pink-haired girl named Anaka revealed herself as the one who intervened. Yuki confronted her, thanking her for the help. Though Anaka panicked at being caught, she gathered her courage and confidently told the group she knew how they could win the Katsuta festival. The next day in her dojo, Naka is training hard, honing her ninja skills. However, she loses her balance and nearly gets hurt, but her brother Tatsu catches her just in time. He reminds Naka of their family pride and responsibilities, making her feel guilty for slipping up. Yet Tatsu secretly worries about her adorable face potentially getting hurt from falling. Meanwhile, the school festival kicks off and the class competition is revealed, a game of cops and robbers. Tatsu is assigned the role of the cop, while all the other students will play as robbers. Suspicious of Yuki, who claims to be Hitoriyoshi's cousin, the students suspect she's hiding something. Tatsu, wary of her mysterious nature, believes she could be a threat to his family and decides to keep a close eye on her. Hitoriyoshi's class decides to run an animal cafe as their festival theme. Backstage, Naka confides in Hitoriyoshi about her struggles and how much she wants to prove herself by winning against Tatsu in the cops and robbers game. However, she admits to feeling intimidated by Yuki's presence. Hitoriyoshi reassures her that they'll do well. Just then, a figure in a giant bottle-shaped catsuit enters, startling everyone, only for them to realize it's Taiga in costume. Confident in his ability to win the game with Yuki and Naka on his team, Taiga brushes off any doubts about Naka, who insists that she's a fast runner. Yuki rallies the team, assuring them they can beat the formidable Tatsu together. Unbeknownst to them, Tatsu is secretly listening in on their conversation from the cafe. Hearing Yuki motivate his sister fuels his anger. Later, as they finalize their plans, Taiga declares that he'll win the game in his bottle costume, hoping to gain fame as a mascot on live TV. This reminds Hitoriyoshi of the event's media coverage, and he worries about Yuki being shown on camera. Before he can ask her, Riko and Kobaki interrupt. Riko gets upset about missing Yuki in a bunny costume for the cafe but gathers her courage to ask Yuki if she has friends. Panicking, she changes her question to invite Yuki to be her friend instead. Yuki warmly agrees, nearly causing Naka to burst with excitement. Hitoyoshi invites them to explore the festival together, but Naka excuses herself to investigate something. Feeling happy about her new friendship with Yuki, she reassures herself that she'll remain loyal even knowing Yuki's true nature. Naka sneaks off ninja style to overhear the game rules, only to discover something alarming. When the game begins, the commentator introduces Naka, who is met with cheers for her beauty. The rules are explained. Tatsu, as the cop, must capture all the robbers within 15 minutes, while the robbers win by either escaping his reach or freeing their captured teammates. Naka announces a twist. Each class must wear their themed costumes, leaving Yuki's team in animal outfits. Apologizing for the inconvenience, Nika promises to have Yuki's back, and Yuki reassures her that they'll defeat Tatsu. Yuki reluctantly dons her wolf costume, and Hitoyoshi ensures it obscures her face from the cameras. Tatsu, however, immediately spots the wolf costume and realizes it's Yuki. His anger grows as he blames her for distracting Naka earlier. As the game starts, Tatsu tears through the field, capturing robbers with ease and sending them to his makeshift prison. Only the animal trio, Teiga, Yuki, and Naka, remain. Teiga confidently taunts Tatsu, is quickly subdued and thrown into the prison. With only Yuki left, Tatsu focuses all his attention on her. Closing in, he grabs her, ready to throw her into his prison. As Yuki clings to avoid being thrown by Tatsu, her grip strength keeping her grounded, Naka watches in panic, unsure of how to help. Then, recalling their newfound friendship, Naka gathers her courage. Determined to protect Yuki, she uses her ninja skills to deploy smoke bombs and cleverly switches places with her. Before Tatsu realizes it, he has accidentally flung his own sister into the air. Watching Naka's dramatic fall into prison, Tatsu is left in disbelief, torn between regret and frustration. Now the sole player left, Yuki remembers Naka's selfless act. Inspired, she reflects on what Hitoyoshi once told her: friends are the family you meet along the way. Hitoyoshi had confided that he was once at his lowest, ready to give up on life, but the support of Teiga and Kobaki gave him a second chance. Yuki resolves to honor Naka's sacrifice and help her new friend just as Hitoyoshi's friends once helped him. While Tatsu agonizes over his mistake, Yuki devises her next move. Determined to avoid the cameras and outwit Tatsu, she engages him in a high-stakes struggle. The clash turns chaotic, with their movements creating a whirlwind of energy. During the scuffle, Tatsu accuses Yuki of pretending to care about Naka, claiming she couldn't possibly understand the pain his sister has endured. Stung by the accusation, Yuki throws Tatsu to the ground, breaking free and sprinting toward Naka's prison. Grasping Naka's hand, Yuki sincerely tells her, "I think I understand you a little better now. Can we still be friends?" Naka, overwhelmed with emotion, barely manages to nod before the game whistle blows. As the whistle signals the end of the match, Tatsu assumes his team has won. However, Riko points out that both Yuki and Naka are in prison at the whistle, meaning Tatsu technically wins. Yuki, confused and disappointed by the outcome, feels her efforts were in vain. The commentators and TV crew, however, are enthralled by her performance and insist on interviewing her. Realizing the danger this poses, Naka quickly creates another smokescreen. In the confusion, Teiga swaps into Yuki's wolf costume while Yuki sneaks into Teiga's bobble suit. With Hitoyoshi and the others' help, Yuki escapes unnoticed. Later, as Tatsu tells Naka it's time to go home, he warns Yuki to stay away from his sister. While Yuki remains confused by Tatsu's hostility, she promises Naka that she looks forward to seeing her again at school. The two share a genuine moment of joy, their friendship deepening despite the day's chaos. That night, Hitoyoshi finds Yuki alone on the rooftop, gazing at the sky. When he asks if she's upset about losing, she admits she was at first, but now all she feels is a fluttering in her chest. Hitoyoshi explains it's excitement, and Yuki realizes she's experiencing joy, something foreign to her assassin past. She confesses she doesn't want the festival to end. Hitoyoshi reassures her there will be another one next year, where they can challenge Tatsu again. This thought fills Yuki with hope. For the first time, she realizes that unlike her old life, where tomorrow was uncertain, her new life lets her savor the little things and look forward to what's to come. A few days later, Naka visits Hitoyoshi's house to showcase her knife-throwing skills. While everyone praises her abilities, she admits feeling overshadowed because her brother Tatsu is even better. Naka confides that she dislikes her ninja powers and wishes for a normal life. Hearing this, Yuki relates to her feelings and shares her own desire to live a normal life. The two bond over their shared sentiments, and when Yuki suggests they talk more, Naka feels genuinely happy. Just then, Grace arrives, teasing Hitoyoshi by saying that adding Naka increases his harem. Hitoyoshi brushes her off, calling her comments nonsense. Suddenly, a knife cuts through Grace's lollipop, and although Yuki apologizes, it's obvious she's jealous of how composed Grace is. Curious, Naka asks if Grace is like them. Grace reveals she's an assassin and that she knows Naka belongs to the Hikage ninja family, surprising Naka. When Hitoyoshi asks why Grace has come, she explains that she'll miss Christmas because of a mission in China. She mentions the possibility of encountering Yuki's old organization and even learning more about her sister. Before leaving, Grace tells Hitoyoshi to enjoy the holidays with his lover, which he adamantly denies. Naka, however, misinterprets the situation and asks if Hitoyoshi and Yuki are dating. While Hitoyoshi tries to clear up the misunderstanding by explaining they're cousins, Yuki remains silent. She reflects on how her life has changed, realizing that unlike before when she only looked out for herself, she now has people she cares about and wants to protect. This thought makes her happy, which uplifts both Hitoyoshi and Naka. However, Hitoyoshi privately feels that Yuki doesn't see him romantically but rather as family. As snow begins to fall, the group admires the sight. Hitoyoshi then receives a text from his estranged father informing him he'll return in the new year. The next morning, the yard is blanketed in snow. Mochi is the first to dive in, followed by Hitoyoshi, who builds a perfect snowman. Inspired, Yuki attempts to make her own but ends up creating a lopsided and chaotic-looking snowman. Despite this, Hitoyoshi praises her effort, calling it amazing, which brings a smile to her face. They share a warm moment, but Mochi, acting like a playful troublemaker, destroys Yuki's snowman. Heartbroken, Yuki tries to fix it, but when Hitoyoshi tells her it's no use, she becomes visibly upset. Hitoyoshi's phone suddenly rings, and when he answers, it's his father. Yuki notices his distressed expression during the call, and when he hangs up, he tells her to guard the house as he needs to visit his family. Before he leaves, Yuki asks him to meet her afterward. That evening, as Hitoyoshi walks home from his family's house, he notices a commotion nearby. To his surprise, it's Yuki in a casual outfit that turns heads. She wraps her scarf around his neck, telling him to stay warm and gently takes his hand and asking him to go on a date. Hitoyoshi starts freaking out and asks why she wants a date. Yuka explains that Riko suggested it, but she also genuinely wants to cheer him up. She confesses that she feels unsatisfied when he's sad. Hearing this, Hitoyoshi can't refuse and agrees to the date. Still holding hands, they wander through the snow-covered streets. Hitoyoshi struggles internally, trying to suppress his feelings as he keeps seeing Yuki as a child in a plot body. As the snow falls again, he admires the sight of the snow and Christmas lights, telling Yuki how much he loves the view. Yuki giggles, pointing out that her name means snow, and the way he says it makes her happy. Hitoyoshi's heart races, leaving him panicked by his emotions. Earlier that day, Yuki had called Riko to ask for advice on what to wear. Riko, knowing Hitoyoshi's simple tastes, suggests something elegant yet figure-flattering. They bicker back and forth, with Riko overly enthusiastic about the idea of Yuki dating Hitoyoshi so she could become her sister-in-law. Later, after the date, Hitoyoshi confronts Riko about her matchmaking efforts and asks if she thinks Yuki has romantic feelings for him. Riko teases him, suggesting Yuki might not even realize her feelings yet, then proposes they use a love quiz app to find out. Hitoyoshi dismisses it as nonsense, but Riko insists, claiming a friend of hers ended up dating her crush thanks to it. As Riko starts asking him questions, Hitoyoshi reluctantly answers each yes, making him more aware of how compatible he and Yuki are. However, the last question asks if Yuki has ever explicitly told him she likes him. Hitoyoshi hesitates but ultimately says no, earning a score of 96%. While Riko is confident they're destined to date, Hitoyoshi fixates on the missing 4%, worrying about it. Yuki then joins them, and Riko immediately suggests she take the quiz too. As Yuki answers each question with a confident yes, Hitoyoshi grows increasingly flustered. When the final question comes, Yuki answers without hesitation that Hitoyoshi has told her he likes her, causing him to spiral into panic. Meanwhile, Riko revels in victory, smugly celebrating her future role as Yuki's sister-in-law. Later, the three enjoy hot pot together. Riko starts teasing Hitoyoshi, recounting embarrassing stories about how he used to mess up the house to annoy their father. Mortified, Hitoyoshi tells her to shut up, desperate to hide his childish past from Yuki. To retaliate, he starts kicking Riko under the kotatsu, but she doesn't react. Confused, he continues kicking harder and harder until he finally looks under the table, only to realize he's been kicking Yuki the entire time. Both of them freeze in embarrassment, and when Riko notices their awkwardness, she asks what's going on. They refuse to explain, only making Riko laugh as she declares they're like a cute couple keeping secrets. Both Hitoyoshi and Yuki immediately fold, their faces bright red. After their date, Hitoyoshi finds himself constantly dreaming about the event and a long-forgotten memory. In the past, he had confessed his love to a girl only to be rejected. She told him he didn't truly love her, he was just lonely. Her words left him traumatized, creating a deep fear of love. One morning, Hitoyoshi wakes up with Yuki sleeping beside him. He tries to quietly leave, but Yuki stirs awake. Still, he steps out, seeking fresh air to clear his mind. His emotions for Yuki are overwhelming, and he blames himself for letting her sleep next to him after her nightmares, which have left him sleepless. Yuki, noticing his distress, approaches to check on him, but Hitoyoshi brushes it off, making up an excuse about needing to clean the house. Deep down, he knows it's just a diversion. As he splashes water on his face, he acknowledges his feelings for Yuki, but can't bring himself to confess. The fear of her potentially leaving him as in his past paralyzes him. Meanwhile, Yuki begins cleaning the house with surprising determination, especially as she mops the floor, motivated to improve her efforts. However, Mochi, their mischievous pet, seizes the moment to cause trouble, making Yuki accidentally spill water on herself. Embarrassed, she apologizes, but Hitoyoshi realizes Mochi is the real culprit and scolds him. At that moment, Yuki removes her damp outer layer, revealing the black lace she's wearing underneath. Hitoyoshi's heartbeat quickens at the sight, and he quickly excuses himself, fleeing to calm down. He chastises himself for being so easily affected by her actions, but remains hesitant about confessing his feelings. Later, as he steps outside, he finds Yuki kneeling, offering her lap for him to rest his head on. Her bright, innocent smile sends him into a nervous frenzy. Flustered, he declines, saying he feels embarrassed. This response makes Yuki sad, as she begins to think he's grown tired of her. Overwhelmed by the thought, she starts crying. Yuki, unfamiliar with the sensation of tears, becomes even more confused as she struggles to stop. Hitoyoshi, feeling a pang of guilt, awkwardly changes the subject and suggests she take a bath to avoid catching a cold. Yuki obliges, but Hitoyoshi knows he handled the situation poorly. Over the following days, Yuki begins crying over the smallest things: dogs, fighting cats, even leaves fallen from trees. Each instance leaves Hitoyoshi unsure how to console her. Despite her emotional state, Yuki continues to sleep beside Hitoyoshi at night, preventing him from getting any rest. This routine carries on until New Year's Day. That morning, Yuki searches for Hitoyoshi, only to find a note saying he stepped out for a bit. Deciding to walk Mochi and do some shopping, she discovers the local market is closed for the holiday. Venturing into a supermarket for the first time, Yuki feels out of her depth, unsure of what to do in the unfamiliar environment. A kind butcher offers her some roast beef, and she gratefully buys it, planning to prepare it for dinner. At home, Yuki finds Hitoyoshi in the kitchen, making okonomiyaki. He surprises her with some roast beef he had bought earlier, not realizing she had already brought some home. Overwhelmed by the abundance of roast beef, Yuki bursts into tears. They end up eating all the roast beef together, and when Yuki takes a bite of the katsudan sauce-covered okonomiyaki, she cries again, this time because of how delicious it is. That night, Hitoyoshi opts to sleep on the couch, telling himself he needs to pull himself together as his father is returning the next day. While he's asleep, Yuki gently places a blanket over him. The next morning, Riko shows up for their New Year celebration. However, because Hitoyoshi is still asleep, Riko's plans are disrupted. Confused, Yuki asks what Riko is talking about. When Riko casually mentions that it's Hitoyoshi's birthday, Yuki is struck with guilt and begins crying again. Riko, shocked by her reaction, tries to console her but struggles as she has never seen Yuki cry before. Yuki mutters that her eyes must be broken, deciding it's better to stay home. Riko understands and leaves. Later, Yuki notices Hitoyoshi's phone buzzing and sees a text from Naka inviting them to visit the shrine. Yuki, wanting to step out, decides to go without him. She arrives at the shrine looking adorable in her outfit, meeting Naka, who acts as her guide since Yuki isn't familiar with shrine visits. They start by drawing fortunes. While Naka is thrilled to share this moment with Yuki, Yuki begins crying again, overwhelmed by her emotions. Concerned, Naka sits her down to talk. Yuki's fortune suggests she will lose something, and she assumes it means she'll part ways with Hitoyoshi. In tears, Yuki confesses her fears to Naka. She worries that Hitoyoshi has been distant and might no longer need her. The thought of him leaving terrifies her, and she can't stop crying at the idea that he might hate her. To comfort her, Naka shares her own struggles with crying, explaining how sometimes sadness builds up and overflows. She recalls advice from her mother, saying that crying helps release buried emotions. Encouraging Yuki to let it all out, Naka reassures her that her smile will return someday. After calming down, they make their wishes at the shrine. Yuki wishes to always be with the one she loves. Meanwhile, Hitoyoshi's father lands in Japan and tries calling him, but Hitoyoshi doesn't pick up. He's still fast asleep at home. As Yuki and Naka walk home, they discuss what to get for Hitoyoshi's birthday. Naka asks what he likes, and Yuki first thinks of fried pork before remembering the action figures in his room. They decide to visit a store and find the exact model he owns. Naka informs Yuki that the figures are geishas. When Yuki asks how to get the black one, Naka tells her she'll have to keep trying. After a dozen failed attempts, Yuki cries out in frustration, feeling like she's failed to get a present. Just then, a man approaches, offering advice after seeing her distress. He rambles about how victory requires determination. While Naka is skeptical, Yuki takes his words to heart, channeling her inner assassin aura. She declares her intent to win and tries again with full focus. Miraculously, she gets the one she wanted. Yuki thanks the man, who chuckles, saying she reminds him of his son, who also cries when he loses. Back home, Riko smacks Hitoriyoshi awake from a dream about maids, warning him that their father is coming. Hitoriyoshi notices a note from Yuki and realizes he never told her about his father's return. Riko scolds him for not talking to his own housemate, but Hitoriyoshi argues that living together doesn't mean constant conversation. It reminds him of the past, when his mother left and his father became distant. Fear kept him from asking about his father's feelings, especially since he always looked depressed. Eventually, his father left him in a nanny's care while working overseas, making it even harder to connect. Just then, Naka texts Hitoriyoshi about Yuki's geisha losses and suggests he cheer her up. When Yuki arrives home, Riko greets her but immediately notices something off. Hitoriyoshi begins telling Yuki about his father's return but hesitates and changes the subject. In that moment, he realizes his cowardice, wanting to keep Yuki away from his father. However, he tells Riko that he will protect Yuki, earning a teasing remark from her about his newfound manhood. Their father arrives. Riko jumps at him affectionately, while Hitoriyoshi awkwardly lingers behind. Mustering his courage, introduces Yuki as the new thick maid of the house with a dark past. The moment Yuki enters, their father instantly recognizes her and calls her by her real name, Shu. As Hitoriyoshi prepares coffee, Yuki thanks his father for his earlier advice. Hitoriyoshi joins the conversation but finds himself sidelined as the two exchange words. He realizes his father knows both Yuki and her former assassin master. The father offers condolences for Yuki's master's passing, but Hitoriyoshi remains silent, once again feeling like an outsider, just as he did when his mother left. Riko asks their father how he knows about assassins, but he dodges the question with a joke. Hitoriyoshi, however, sees through the act. His father has always used humor to deflect serious topics. Then Hitoriyoshi realizes how selfish he's been. He's never truly tried to understand the people around him through words. Their father suddenly announces he has to leave again. When Riko reminds him it's Hitoriyoshi's birthday, he responds coldly, saying Hitoriyoshi never won this celebration. He gives him the most unenthusiastic happy birthday and hands him a gift. As their father and Riko prepare to leave, Hitoriyoshi hesitates, torn about not speaking to him properly. But as they reach the car, memories of Yuki's courage flood his mind. Determined, he stops the door and asks his father if he can keep Yuki with him. Instead of answering, his father looks at him and asks, "What do you want to do?" With unwavering resolve, Hitoriyoshi boldly declares that he wants Yuki to stay. His father, sensing his growth, nods in approval. For the first time, Hitoriyoshi feels truly heard. He has finally voiced his feelings properly. As Yuki prepares to speak, his father suddenly hands him the phone and asks him to pass it to her. Over the call, he asks for her thoughts on Hitoriyoshi. Without hesitation, Yuki tells him that Hitoriyoshi has been incredible to her. Relieved, the father thanks her, saying that because of her, Hitoriyoshi is starting to change for the better. Moved to tears, Yuki suddenly asks Hitoriyoshi to watch the night view with her. When he agrees, she squeals with excitement, hoists him up like a ninja, and dashes to the rooftop. Under the city lights, Yuki hands Hitoriyoshi his birthday present, an action figure, though slightly damaged from an accident. Overcome with guilt, she begins to cry, but Hitoriyoshi reassures her and accepts the gift. Deep inside, he realizes he wants to be honest about his feelings. Opening up, Hitoriyoshi shares his past, how he once idolized his father only for everything to change when his mother left. The loss shattered his father, making him distant. For 10 years, Hitoriyoshi never truly tried to understand him, choosing avoidance instead. But deep down, he blames himself for not making the effort to fix their relationship. He refuses to let the same thing happen with Yuki. With all the charm of a devoted maid lover, Hitoriyoshi asks Yuki to be his precious family. Stunned, Yuki freezes, her mind short-circuiting. But soon tears well up, not from sadness but joy. Smiling, she tells him she would love to be part of his family. Hitoriyoshi is completely captivated by her beauty. Seizing the moment, he finally confesses his love. A brief silence follows. Then Yuki smiles and softly tells him she loves him too. Hitoriyoshi, overwhelmed, bursts into tears. Later that night, back in his room, Hitoriyoshi drops to his knees, staring at the gift Yuki gave him. Relief washes over him. He finally expresses his feelings. But then it hits him. Yuki loves him, his family, his heart shatters. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Yuki chops cabbage absent-mindedly when realization strikes. Just like Kitariyoshi, she loves him too. Her heart races for her master. This then marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach our current goal of 20,000 subscribers.